Hello and welcome to Season 4, Episode 1 of the Raider Power Podcast. We are back, folks. I'm Ryan, and with me, as always, is my man Moss and our guy Evan. How are we doing today, fellas?
I'm doing fantastic, Ryan. And I love that it's Season 4, Episode 1, 4-1, baby.
4-1. Evan, how we doing?
I'm doing good, Ryan. Still a little licking my wounds after that loss, but
yeah,
hopefully we get back after it.
We have a lot to recap. We're 6 games into the season. There have been some ups. There have been some downs. We've seen this team play, I feel like, 4 different types of football throughout these games. Why don't we just start off with a general feeling? How do you feel the season is going so far?
I am feeling that the season is going pretty much how I expected it. There was way too big of expectations for Matt Wells after the West Virginia win. And I thought this team, even though we won that game down 9 stars, we saw against Texas that we just have major holes on the defense, especially in the secondary and stopping the run. So expecting us to really be like a contender, just wasn't a thought in my mind after that Texas game. But, the West Virginia game was a big win, and it's just kind of been like a roller coaster ride throughout the entire season.
Yeah, I mean, where I'm at is there is no consistency with this team.
No, nothing.
I mean, of course, a team can show up sharp or a team can show up dull, but I feel like on any given Saturday, you're going to get one Texas Tech team, and then the next week you could get an entirely different team. It
100%.
It totally depends on what team shows up. I mean,
100%.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I mean, we've seen the defense hold teams to 20 points. We've seen the defense let up 70 or 50. We've seen the offense come out flying. And like the first game of the season against Houston, that was honestly a great win. Houston's a pretty good team.
Great win.
But then the very next week against SFA, I mean, bad win.
That was
bad win. It's just been, like you said, Evan, it's a roller coaster. And the last 2 weeks are the perfect example of it. The good win against West Virginia with a lot of guys hurt. And then you roll up, home game, TCU, night game, and you let up 400 yards on the run against a team that can't pass. You stack the box and they still run all over you. It's literally just like 2 different football teams that you don't know who you're going to get week to week. It's kind of wildly frustrating, but I mean, they're 4-2.
So one other thing I want to know. Think about
the wins, though. I mean, the wins they're not, we have one quality win. I guess you could say West Virginia is not a good football team.
Right, Chris. I mean, everyone thinks that we roll into Morgantown after getting beat by Texas so bad and we get that win and they're like, okay, well, way to respond. And I was one of those people too, but then West Virginia gets beat by 4 scores against Baylor the next week.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
it could be a deal there where West Virginia's not that good. But the way that I'm seeing things, I haven't been super impressed with Cumbie. I haven't been upset with Cumbie. I haven't been super impressed with Matt Wells. I haven't been that upset with Matt Wells. Who I'm really upset with is Keith Patterson. I think Keith Patterson is calling the worst defensive schemes that I've seen since he's doing as bad as David Gibbs was doing. I mean, to give up almost 400 yards rushing to a TCU team, and I get it, they have the Alabama decommit that's with them, but we were making their second and third stringers look like All-Americans, and I've been so frustrated on the defense.
Can we also say that they only attempted 10 pass plays?
Well, that's the thing. With TCU, they're not going to pass. They're going to run. You can stuff the box, which they did, but they somehow still let up 400 yards. And they had 2 different guys. One guy ran for like 200. The other guy ran for 150. I mean, that's just insane.
It's crazy. They were just breaking tackles left and right. And as soon as they got out of the first tackle, there was no one there. I mean, I honestly couldn't understand what was going on.
And from an offensive side, I'm not afraid to say it. I know I feel bad for Shuck, and I hope that he recovers well. But prior to that, I really wasn't that impressed with him. I mean, I thought he did okay, but I didn't think that I had a lot higher expectations for Shuck, to be honest.
So I would say I had higher expectations, and he did, fine. He wasn't playing great. He looked pretty good at times. And then Columbia comes in. And I'll tell you what, last year, I hated Columbia so much. Yeah. This year, he's surprised me in that, he hasn't been that bad. He's honestly played some pretty good football. The interception, the pick six against TCU,
that wasn't his fault. Not his fault.
But he's played it's safe football for the most part, a couple of shots over the top, but pretty good football. But honestly, this team it's a running team as well. You got to think SaRodorick's the best player on the offense.
Here's where losing Shuck hurts the most, in my opinion. We have the best wide receiver, in my opinion, in the conference in Eric Ezukama. I think he's
top 5 in the country for sure.
Yeah, no question. But here's where losing Shuck really hurts. Chemistry between quarterback and receiver is a very real deal. And they were the pair. I mean, even before the offseason, Shuck and Ezukama did everything together. They had great chemistry on and off the field. And that's why we haven't seen Ezukama making big plays like he did when Shuck was there, simply because Henry Columbia isn't used to getting those reps with him. They don't have the repertoire that they did. So I think, in my mind, losing Shuck, not a huge deal because Columbia's doing so good, but it's a big deal when it comes to our receivers because it takes away Ezukama's edge.
100%. 100%. But I will say that Shuck did target Ezukama. I think they were saying 60-something% of the passes were going to him, and he wasn't really sharing the ball around. And then Columbia really spreads the offense and gets to many receivers, but I just don't think I don't know if he has confidence in himself to make the throws just that are 50-50 balls that Ezukama can go up and get, I feel like he is a safe quarterback.
He's making better decisions, plain and simple. I think that he's seeing the field better than he saw it last year. He's progressing through his reads better. He knows when to throw it away for the most part. That was a big problem of his last year, was taking unnecessary sacks. So far, I think that his football IQ has significantly risen from last year, in my opinion.
I also say, he's a very tough quarterback. I mean, we've seen him take hits and he just bounces right back. I mean, he's a gritty, strong guy.
I mean, he's throwing for 300 a game almost, I mean, he's getting yards down the field, like you said, spreading it out, making right decisions. But it's not necessarily resulting in drives that succeed always, right? They get held up. They go forward on fourth more than any team I've ever seen in my life. And they don't get it all that often. That TCU game, I think by the third quarter, they'd gone for it on fourth 5 or 6 times already. It was kind of insane to see. And I think that's where Cumbie has to kind of make some better decisions. I think it comes down to game plan. And like you said, with the defensive game plan being terrible, the offensive game plan, I feel like it's just wildly inconsistent as well. I don't feel like it's always being successful. I mean, West Virginia only putting up 23 points against, out of Texas, West Virginia, and TCU, they're the worst team that they played. That shouldn't have been a field goal game. And then, against TCU, they ended up scoring 31, but that was some garbage time stuff. They were down 3 scores almost the entire game. I just feel like as bad as the defensive side of the ball has been, the offense, if you want to compete in the Big 12 with the Class A of the Big 12, maybe you can beat West Virginia, maybe you can beat Kansas, but the rest of the teams, you're not going to be competing with the type of game plans they're putting out there.
100%.
So before we really dive into the bad, what, or rather who, has impressed you so far?
I will say, SaRodorick has impressed me coming off his injury and actually producing is big. Like we said, Columbia has impressed me. Xavier White has impressed me. And, Rigdon has impressed me at times, not in the TCU game, but in the West Virginia game, he impressed me as well. Also, Kuntz, tight end. When he's used, I feel like it's a very secure play. He's going to make the catch and he's going to break a tackle and get 8 yards.
Yeah, for me, it's definitely running back focus on the offense side of the ball. SaRodorick, Xavier White at times, but SaRodorick definitely impressed me a lot. And then, as a deep threat, Geiger, past couple games, he's had some big plays. Definitely a speedster on the outside. He's impressed me. I didn't really see him being that much of a weapon coming into the season. That's been pretty awesome. When, like you said, with Chuck, like there was a chemistry with Ezekama, but I almost feel like now with Colombi, if he's taking a deep shot, it's because Geiger burned someone on the outside. So he's definitely impressed me the past few games. But otherwise, it's SaRodorick, number one, honestly. And on the defensive side, I can't think of anyone really standing out.
Yeah. So who I've been impressed with so far was Geiger, the transfer from Troy. I thought that he's really filled in that spot well. Kind of reminds me of Jakeem Grant a little bit. Travis Kuntz. Been really impressed with the freshman tight end, Mason Tharp, 6'9", 240, just big body dude. I think that over time he could develop into like a Jason Morrow type player, which would be.
I would love that.
And then I love Loic Fungi, number 19, another receiver that I think Colombi has really good chemistry with. They did an interview and he talks about how Fungi is kind of one of his guys. So assuming that Colombi continues to have the reins, I expect Loic to get more and more production in the offense. Then on the defensive side, Ryan, like you said, it's hard to say who's standing out because we've been so bad. But in my opinion, if it wasn't for our linebacking core with Schooler and Merriweather and Jeffers, they would be doubling the yards we're putting on because it seems like those guys are the only ones making plays.
100%.
No, that's fair. Like Rico Jeffers is definitely all over the field. You see him almost in every play, at least near the ball. So that's a fair point. And I couldn't agree more with Tharp. He had that big catch that they called back because someone lined up, covering him up on the line, which kind of sucked, But he is a big guy out there. And, he definitely looks like only a freshman. He could be a big target, just one of those guys that can come up the seam and just kind of open up the outside for the other receivers as well. No, I'm a big fan of Tharp in the little we've seen.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so right now we're standing at 4-2. We've got Kansas coming up. I got a question for y'all. Are we going bowling?
This is a great question because we have to win 2 of the next 6.
Are we going bowling, Ryan?
So I'm going to tell you this. After next week, we're going to be 5-2. We're going to be 5-2, and what we're going to have left is the meat of the Big 12 to play against, right? Like we played Texas, we played TCU, but this is where it gets real meaty. You got K-State, Oklahoma, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, Baylor. And I'll tell you what, the best chances of going bowling is winning the next 2 in a row. It's Kansas,
That's exactly
Kansas State.
what I'm saying.
Last 4 games to close out, Baylor might not be ranked right now, but Baylor is a damn good football team. I've been really impressed with them all year. In Baylor, last game of the season, woof. Oklahoma State and Oklahoma.
That won't be at Baylor, right? They'll be at Jerry World.
Oh, is that the Jerry World game?
No, they got rid of that. Now it's at Baylor and then Lubbock next year. Jerry World.
That one's gonna be a real tough one to win. I think to go bowling, you got to beat the 2 teams from Kansas.
I 100% agree.
I agree with that. I also think, I know that if we don't go bowling this year, Wells is gone.
Ooh.
Yep.
I would rather him be gone.
I would be willing to bet money on that right now that he's got to go bowling.
I also think that if they're 6-6 and go bowling, and they, but they're 6-6 and lose the last 4 games of the season, and their only Big 12 wins are West Virginia, Kansas, and Kansas State, I still think he's gone.
Dude, Kansas State's not bad. Kansas State's a pretty good team.
No, they're not. I think if they don't go bowling, it's you're 100% right. He's probably definitely gone. I think if they go 6-6 with the 2 games we think they can win left, he might still be gone.
Yeah,
I mean, you can't be happy with what you've seen out of him. Like, you can't be happy with not only him, but, everyone touts like, he's bringing his defensive coordinator with him. The defense is going to be switched around. He's got these good transfers coming in. I mean, it hasn't worked. The defense has been as bad as ever, and he hasn't changed Texas Tech's football style of play. We just put up less points and lose more games.
100%.
I think that there's going to be a change made one way or the other. I think that if Wells somehow figures out a way to keep his job, if the season progresses like this, I think he's going to make a change at defensive coordinator. But it's almost like it's just a buy in his time move. That's what he did with Yost last year. But at some point, you got to just cut off the head of the snake. You know, it feels like Wells is just kind of stringing us along. And I don't know. For me to be happy with Wells as our head coach, they would really have to turn some things around, to be honest.
You know what? You guys hate Wells so much, and it's crazy. I think we should keep him no matter what this season, and just demote him to like Waterboy. I just think we should demote him to like Waterboy or something. He can stay a part of the program, but he needs to be in the locker room cleaning up towels.
But here's the thing about Big 12 football. To win games, you have to be able to recruit the skill position players at a very high level, right? Because if you're talking about the front seven on both sides of the ball, unless you're Oklahoma or Texas, you're not getting the big name recruits from the front seven guys. You're not going to bully other teams around because those guys go to the SEC. They go to the Big 10. That's where they're getting drafted from. To win in the Big 12, you have to be able to recruit skill position players, the receivers, the D-backs, all of that. And you need to win by highlight plays on defense and scoring a lot of points on offense. And I just don't see Matt Wells doing that. You know, the last handful of head coaches, that's their bread and butter. Matt Wells isn't going to get that done, and you're not going to be able to change the way Big 12 football is played. And I think that's my biggest realization with him. He's not a Big 12 style coach.
No. And, you know, his record is garbage. And guess who's Evan, I just got a quick question for you. Which coach is undefeated this year?
I was already ready for that to come. Here's the problem.
What coach is undefeated this year in the NFL?
That would be Cliff Kingsbury. Are you going to allow me to? Are you going to allow me to? Respond to that?
He's undefeated in the NFL. Wow, that's crazy.
Ryan's previous point is my entire argument. He just made my point for me. To be able to win in the Big 12, you got to recruit those players at a high level. Cliff Kingsbury was a terrible recruiter. He said that he hated recruiting. He couldn't bring talent in. Of course, you're not going to win at the Big 12 level.
All right,
Mahomes.
We've gone on this tangent like I don't know how many.
Yeah,
times.
I didn't want to go down that road.
I think we've gotten past the Cliff Kingsbury talks, and instead we can just say, "Good job, Cliff." Chris, you don't need to be a dick about it.
I was just saying. I was asking. I was just playing some trivia with Evan. That's it.
Hey, like I said, give him the talent. He can coach. He's a good offensive mind, but he got to be able to recruit at the college level.
And that's why I think we need some new blood here. And you know who I think would be a nice head coach if we want to start talking about, you know, guys who have been through Texas Tech before, great offensive mind, maybe USC's offensive coordinator, Graham Harrell.
Yes, I totally agree. I totally agree.
Granted, USC's kind of sucked this year, but he's done a good job.
I like that. I like that a lot. No, I like it a lot.
Much
better than this jar of mayonnaise that we have coaching.
I would really take a hard look at Sonny Dykes at SMU. They're 5-0. They beat TCU. He's got a really good program going at SMU. I think to some degree he feels a little bit stung by Tech because we didn't really look at him hard for our last head coaching job, and he wanted it. You know, he was kind of vocal about it. So I think he would be a great candidate. He would be the first person I called if I was Kirby.
I think that's a smarter choice than Graham Harrell. I just think it would be cool to see him come be the coach. But you're 100%. Right. But, you know, you're right. You know, Graham Harrell, great offensive mind again, but you want to talk about more well-rounded and maybe better at recruiting. You're right. SMU has been a great team this year. They were able to beat TCU too. So, you know, maybe he knows a thing or two about stopping the run, which would be cool.
And I don't know anything about Wake Forest, but I would be taking a hard look at that coach too.
Hey, they look like the best team in the ACC right now. Wake Forest has been a hell of a team this year, and they've really turned that program around. So I'm with you there.